John, do I need to adjust this at all? Hi, everybody. I'm going to get this mic set and then we can get started. Probably could have done that myself, but oh, good. Thank you so much. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the second in our 2026 AViD lineup. We are so incredibly happy to see you all here. Thank you for coming. My name is Oma Ford. I'm a board member for the Des Moines Public Library Foundation. In case you aren't already aware, thanks to our generous donors and supporters, the foundation actually funds almost 90% of the amazing programs that the Des Moines Public Library offers. I'm going to have you do that again in a minute. That includes the summer reading program, that includes Tech Central right next door, and most relevant for this evening, the AViD series, which is why we are all here. We are especially grateful to the organizations and the individual households who specifically funded the AViD program for 2026. All of those supporters are listed in the program that you received when you came in, so please take a look at that. And I'd like to take just a minute and have us all thank those sponsors and donors for their amazing and generous support. And now I'm going to make a little ask of you. If you do not already support the foundation and you are able, I just want to say that a gift of absolutely any size helps us do this amazing work to support the fantastic programs that make the Des Moines Public Library such an amazing asset in our community. I did a little exercise this morning. I went on my timeline on Libby, which includes physical books and ebooks that I've checked out at the library. I went down the list and I looked for the 3 top reads from the last 4 months or so. My most favorite 3 books from on the list. And I added up what it would have cost me to buy those books. And then I clicked dmplfoundation.org, dmplfoundation.org, and I made a donation for that equivalent amount of money this morning in recognition of one of the ways that the Des Moines Public Library supports a vibrant life for myself. You might pick just one book, you might have a completely different calculus that you want to use, but I ask you to think about how important the library is in your life, and if you are able to help support us at the foundation, please do so. Thank you in advance. And now I just have a couple more little housekeeping items to go through before we get started. The first is that your feedback helps us improve AViD. There should be a card on your chair. We ask that you please do fill that out and return it. There's also a QR code you can follow to give that feedback online. Either way works, so do whatever works easiest for you. But we want this to be the best program it can be for those of you who come to join us. The second thing is that Maria will be signing books after the program out in the lobby here. If you need to buy one of her books and you haven't already done that tonight, Beaverdale Books is here for you. They're our wonderful partner in this, and 10% of the proceeds from those sales tonight go directly to the foundation. So another fantastic way to support both your library and an indie bookstore, win-win. All right, enough of all of that. We're going to get down to the program. I would like to introduce our moderator tonight. Actually, Charity Nebbe probably doesn't need a big introduction in this room, but she is an award-winning host and journalist for IPR, for Iowa PBS, and for Iowa Public Radio. She is the host of Iowa Life, as well as Talk of Iowa on IPR, and the founder of the Talk of Iowa Book Club. And if you've been to a few of these, you also know she's an absolutely delightful moderator and interviewer. Please join me in welcoming Charity Nebbe.
Wonderful to be here. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I want to tell you a little bit about Maria Semple. Now, you probably know a little bit already, but she is a best-selling novelist. Her 2012 novel, Where'd You Go, Bernadette, was on the New York Times bestseller list for 84 weeks and was turned into a major motion picture starring Cate Blanchett. I think there's a musical in the works. Maybe we'll talk about that later. And writing novels is actually a second career for Semple. She used to write for television for a few shows you've probably heard of: Arrested Development, Mad About You. Her first job was on Beverly Hills 90210. Where are my Gen Xers in the room? This TV writing background is something that she shares with the main character of her fourth novel, Go Gentle. Go Gentle revolves around Adora Hazard. She is a woman who has reinvented herself a couple of times, and she thinks she's pretty much got it all figured out. She is a philosopher and dedicated to stoicism personally and professionally. She is a divorcee raising a teenage daughter on New York's Upper West Side, and she has recruited like-minded women of a certain age to buy up apartments on her floor, a collective she maybe jokingly, refers to as her coven. Then Adora's life gets turned upside down by a handsome stranger and some international intrigue. It does keep the pages turning, I promise you. Go Gentle has just been released. It's already off to an amazing start. Oprah picked it for her book club, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. And a reminder before I welcome Maria to the stage, each of you does have a question card on your chair. So if you have a question for Maria, please write that on the card. In a few minutes, volunteers will walk by. You can hold up your card or pass it to the end of the row. They'll get them to me, and we'll work those into the conversation. You already heard that Beaverdale Books is selling Go Gentle, and Maria is signing books after the event, so you do want to partake of that as well. And I also want to say thank you to the Des Moines Public Library and the AViD series and all of these wonderful sponsors. And let's just take a moment to think about this amazing public library and all of the public libraries in the state of Iowa that need our support now more than they ever have before. So let's just give public libraries a big round of applause. And now it is my great honor to welcome Maria Semple. It's so great to have you here, and John Pemble here is going to adjust our microphones.
Hello.
Right now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. What a crowd.
Right.
Very honored, really honored that you're all here. Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to be here with you and with every single one of you. And I do want to dive in, and I want to talk about Adora. So Adora is a divorcee. She's in her 50s. She's living in New York's Upper West Side. She's raising a teenage daughter. And you share a lot of these characteristics with Adora.
Check. Yes. And when I'm starting a novel, I really feel like I have very little imagination. I kind of draw a little circle around me, and then just whatever is in my immediate existence, just where I live. The daughters in my book just keep tracking with the age of my daughter, and yes, recently divorced, recently moved to New York from Seattle, and I find that I really do that. Like, all my books really are me. All the protagonists are me. They're exactly where I am in that moment in time. And the reason why I do that, why I start there, is because I feel like I have authority over that, that I really can write that in a true way, because I know that my plots are probably going to start to get pretty crazy, and I want to have the main protagonist rooted in a reality that I can convince you of. And, before I get to the stuff that's maybe harder to believe, that I need to convince you of as well. But I feel like if we start with just this reality, and also usually the characters that I write, the women I write that kind of track along where I am in my life, they have the kind of the the shame, the guilt, the confusion that I have at that moment in time. You know, it's not just the circumstances, it's also kind of what's going on inside, because then I can, you know, that runs very deep in me, that the negative emotions. And so they're not going to go anywhere, let's just say. So even on a bad writing day, if I can tap into something that I'm going through that's kind of a source of inner conflict for me, I know that'll always be there to write about.
You mentioned that the plot will probably go in some crazy directions. I mean, that is a pattern. And this one, I mean, it's almost hard to describe because it is, you know, it's a beautiful, heartfelt novel. We have these relationships at the center of it. It involves international intrigue, thieves, maybe terrorists. It's a romance.
Yes.
It's a mother-daughter novel.
Yeah. And there's the crazy middle.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And then there's a crazy
I didn't
middle.
even mention that.
No. Yeah, well, so, yes, I mean, that's, I think, that's where I live, I think, as a novelist, is I like to kind of get my characters really real. In my mind, like I like to have a lot of authority over my characters. They're all kind of versions of me. And I like to kind of, I think about putting them on lockdown, you know, so they really make sense. And I feel like the more realistic I can make them, the crazier they're allowed to actually be. And I guess that the kind of rule that I think about is that I put my characters in a situation where if it were me, I would probably just think, oh, this sucks, and walk away. But my characters start causing trouble, you
Right,
know, and
They walk into the
when I say
flames.
this sucks and walk away, and on the drive home, I'm like, you know what, I should have told that person, you know what I feel like doing, and I have my characters actually say those things and do those things, you know, so it's very satisfying as a writer to be able to see where all that trouble goes, you know, but I try to cause less trouble personally in real life. I think about it.
So Adora is also, she is a philosopher, and she's very dedicated to Stoicism.
Yes.
And this is something that you share
Yes.
with this character as well. And I think that Stoicism is not necessarily something that people know about. When we hear Stoic, we think, oh yes, Midwestern farmer, that's what we're talking about.
Right.
People who don't show their emotion, which is not what this is all about. So can you give us briefly a little Stoicism 101?
Yes, well, that's kind of Stoic with a small s, and Stoic with a big S. It's a Greek philosophy that started around 300 BC, and the Stoics were very into reason and believed that you could use reason and apply it to happiness, that you could reason your way to happiness. And the way you did that, kind of the main tenet of it, is that you use reason to differentiate between what you can control and what you cannot control, and you only put your energy and effort into what you can control, and everything else you turn over to fate. And the things you can control are the four virtues, which is wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. And so you're just supposed to be working on, you know, being a virtuous person. That sounds very churchy, you know, but there's like kind of no faith in it. It's just pure reason, you know, and it sounds like AA's Serenity Prayer, you know, it is. They got it from Epictetus. No shade on Bill W., but it came from Epictetus. And cognitive behavioral therapy is openly Stoicism. And let them, I think that Mel Robbins thing that everyone's so into now is rooted in Stoicism. So it's really not that complicated, you know, it's really basic. And personally, when I came across it, it just felt like, oh, I just already felt calmer reading about it, you know, like this idea of like, oh, that's right. I don't want to control other people. I don't want to control outcomes. I should just work on kind of what I can control. And so, you know what I'll say? Okay, so I was on Oprah, right? And so all my friends have been texting me saying, you have the most incredible posture on those Oprah interviews. And I was like, that's why you say that, because on the way to the Oprah interviews, I didn't want like her to like me. I didn't want to sell books. I didn't want to be friends with Oprah. All I wanted to do was have good posture, because I control that. Because that's in my control. And I was like, I'm so glad you noticed that. That's the only thing I set out to do, was have good posture, and then I killed it.
Yeah.
And now I feel kind of amazing, So I'm just saying that's like a little example, of stoicism. Because I could have gone down there wanting Oprah to like me and start going to Broadway shows with me, which I still kind of wish she would do, but there's like no opening there. I'm just telling you, unfortunately. And so, I sat up straight, and then I went home feeling really good that I sat up straight. And now I have the validation.
How long ago did you embrace Stoicism?
About 10 years ago.
And it sounds like it felt very right to you. What do you feel it has done for you in your life?
What it's done for me is that it's let me, it's again, a very much like cognitive behavioral therapy, in that you don't control the events, you control your reaction to the events. And that, I think, is also like it's just best practices. It really makes sense, that events are neutral. They don't contain negative emotions in them. And a lot of times when something happens, if we don't get a job, we're like, oh, this is terrible, this is horrible, I'm ashamed, I'm in panic, all the bad stuff that happens, we think immediately happen, it like baked into the event of not getting the job. But in Stoicism, it's basically like, no, that's neutral. All that happened is that somebody did not get a job. That is like actually a neutral event. That happens a million times today. It's not personal. And that what I particularly like about it is then you can really apply your imagination to thinking about all the good things, that you can do now. Seneca has a quote that says, "There's nothing happens nothing happens so bad that it bars you." See, it's a really terrible quote. Okay, and I write about this quote and how clunky it is, but it's basically, you can't be barred from anything that there's nothing bigger that you're not barred from, if something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever happens that you think is closed off in your life, like there's that always what's still open to you is so much bigger. And that's like a fun exercise. And then suddenly I'm like imaginative, and I get to go, oh yeah. And also, with all the things you think you want that you get, there's always a host of problems that come with them. Like, for instance, right now, me acting like a freak when Oprah called me is now on the internet, okay? So it's like, okay, that's a bad thing that happened that will now dog me for the rest of my life. And so whatever, so you're happy, but then now you look stupid forever. And it already has 1 million views, so what are you gonna do?
So obviously Stoicism is something that has been very powerful in your life. It is very powerful in Adora's life as well, but there wouldn't be a novel if Adora wasn't a little bit of a mess. Mm-hmm. And it feels like she has embraced Stoicism to such a degree that she has created blind spots for herself.
Yes, and that's interesting. I'd like to speak to this because she's my first character where it was really important for me that she was not a mess. I'm just saying, that's interesting you use that word, because I think that, but it's actually like very deeply important to me, is that I feel like as a writer, this is my first novel in 10 years, and that Me Too happened between the last novel and this novel, and I really understood that I was kind of writing women who were messes, that I didn't want to do that anymore. I felt like I didn't want to take shots at women in my books, and I felt like that had often been the source of the comedy for me. And it was as a comedy writer that's kind of what you did, is you made fun of people and you certainly made fun of women, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And so so this was very hard. Like, how do you do a comic protagonist that is not a mess, that you're not making fun of? And it was this bar that I kind of set for myself that, I mean, nobody would know it, but now I'm here talking about it, because you use the M word. And so what I did is I really wanted her to have enormous dignity, but I have her have this maladaptive coping mechanism, which is what you're talking about,
Yes.
that basically she is a stoic sage. And one of the things about stoicism is to desire only what you have. And Seneca says, he who wants nothing is the richest man in the world. And so the idea that she really lives by that, where she wants only her life right now. She doesn't want anything else. And she's really quite arrogant going through life. And I think in a good way. Like, it was really fun to write someone who just is like, anything that happens to her, she's happy about. She just takes everything lightly. And she's really fun, and there's an arrogance to it, which is what philosophers are always accused of, right? Because it's all reason. They think, who needs faith? I can figure out everything with my own brain. And so so she does, so you're right in that she starts the story, flawed, I'd say, but I hope that in the beginning we don't read her that way necessarily. It's only over the course of the book that we start to understand that. And that one of my kind of rules for writing is that I like to start a book when the coping mechanism starts to break down of the main character, and so this, I think, in this case, her coping mechanism, which is to say, I have killed all the desire in me, like I've snuffed out every bit of desire within me, that this is where and then of course she meets a handsome stranger at the ballet, so that challenges this, and that's what starts to make it crumble.
Well, okay, even though I did use the M word.
Yes.
You have created a heroine that I think people are going to want to emulate in so many ways. I mean, I found myself in the first part of the book, I'm like, she dresses almost the same every day. She wears like a blue dress, and she has had them tailored to add pockets to every single dress that
I know,
she
isn't
had.
that
And I'm like,
badass?
that's
I know.
such a good idea,
Yeah.
right? I should do that.
Yeah.
And she also, I mentioned in the introduction, I mentioned the coven. So she lives in this beautiful apartment building. She's got a lot of things going her way. But she is recruiting her friends to buy apartments in the building so that they can share responsibilities or share services, because they're living on their own now. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, how many stories have I seen about, oh, the real life Golden Girls, or
Right.
this group has created a tiny house community of only women in the Southwest.
You read a lot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it's
so
good stuff.
It's good stuff. No, people really like it when it's described. Everyone gets it. They're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, the thing that I've always wanted to do. And to me, the coven, which she calls it really is an expression to me of the fact that these women are in their 50s, they're divorced or widowed, or just plain spinsters. I'm proud of it, and they are. Instead of, I think they're being realistic in that maybe they're not going to find romantic love at this age because the men their age are dating younger women and running around after younger women. And so instead of feeling limited and depressed and like victims, they're like, no, we're just going to go out our way and live the best life possible. So it just shows like an example of Adora and just the positivity that's come with her life. And they really are living an enviable existence, these women.
You also create tension between Adora and her teenage daughter, Viv. And Viv is a spectacular character. She is clearly going to grow up to be just as smart and strong and independent as her mother is. And not surprisingly, the two of them are butting heads like crazy. So much of this was inspired by your life. How did your daughter react to the novel?
Well, considering that lots of Viv's lines were me calling out from my office, like, her name was Poppy. I was like, Poppy, I need a line here. And I just threw the wall, what, Mom? And I'd be like, okay, here's the situation. Viv is this, I need a line for Viv. And then she would just tell me the Viv lines without even coming in, just screaming them through the wall. And so I got a lot of the Viv lines from my daughter. And I love the Viv character. And it was one of the kind of scary things for me to write because Adora's really pretty mean to Viv in the beginning of the book. And it was hard to start, like on page 1, I'll show you how I describe Viv. This is Adora, it's first person. But Adora says, it's in the morning, and I says, Viv appeared wearing that day's iteration of short shorts, baby tee, and sneakers. Her alarm had gone off at 6. Evidence indicated she'd devoted the past hour to awesome lashes and beachy waves. Good morning, I couldn't help but sing out. Gorgeous, shallow creature, Viv. Reliably irritable, bereft of interests, scroller, consumer, influencee. That fate gave me Viv as a daughter provides a daily fountain of dismay and delight. So that's Viv's introduction, and I know it's pretty rough to say about your own daughter, but Adora really dismisses Viv in the beginning and really perceives her as just an eye-rolling, shallow conformist, right? Which is what Adora's not a conformist, and so I think she's just like, how did I get this conformist daughter? And I kind of wrote her to the extreme that way, knowing that Viv would rise up by the end of the book and take over the book, and that it was just that she was just this sleeping dragon, right? That she was watching everything, and it really burned. Adora gets badly burned at the end by Viv, and
deserves it.
And deserves it. Well,
Yeah.
exactly, and that that's a thing that I always try to do is that when. In these big fight scenes, and I'm thinking with, in Where'd You Go, Bernadette, like after the big mudslide, when Audrey goes up to Bernadette's house and she's covered in mud and just starts screaming at her. Like everything that in that scene Audrey says to Bernadette is absolutely true. Every single thing she says is right. She's not saying anything that like makes her a bitch or something, And same with Viv. Like every single thing she says to Adora is absolutely true, and it's one of those things that I think parents know this, that these moments where if you have kids who can push your buttons in a certain way, you just think like, there will be a line in my life of before this fight and after this fight. I'm never going to be able to put myself back together after what they just said to me, and I really wanted to write one of those scenes.
And you succeeded,
okay.
For sure. There's a mid part to the novel that is a flashback to earlier in Adora's life. I mentioned you were a TV writer. Adora was also a TV writer. There are lots of parallels.
Yes.
And in that section, we see a very different Adora, a younger Adora. She's extremely insecure. She's trying very hard to prove herself. And she's depressed. She's really struggling with isolation. And she also, in her workplace, really wants to be accepted. It is a workplace that really seems a lot like Saturday Night Live, which is a show that you also wrote for.
Yes.
And in that workplace, she has a terrible experience where she is manipulated and humiliated and sexually assaulted.
Right.
And is this something that also parallels your life? Is this something you felt like you needed to write about?
Yeah, yes. What I was interested in this section mainly was, Adora. I was writing a memoir or diary entry or whatever. And what I knew that I needed to explain how she got to this place where it was so important from her to kind of sever herself from desire. And so I thought, okay, I have to tell the story about someone where desire got her in so much trouble that she just said never again, right? So that's what I was trying to do with that section. And so when I thought about what it could be and what her past could be, and I came up with all of these kind of possibilities, again, I just thought, well, I've got this thing, you know, that I've never written about, that I feel very strongly about. And also it was important for me to show her having very bad character, as the Stoics would call bad character, because she really aspires to fame and being in with the in crowd, and she's this internalized misogynist, which is what you kind of had to be in the TV rooms back then. She was the only woman writer in a bunch of rooms with men, and she was kind of part of the problem, but then also she was victimized by it. So what happens to Adora is kind of like a pastiche of two different things that happened to me on two different shows. And then I exaggerated them, and, you know, so they could work into the story, but it was interesting. And so I put Adora on the same journey as I was on, which is when this happened in the 90s. We didn't have words for it. You know, we didn't have words for what that was at work when we got treated that way. You know, in both cases, I just didn't tell anyone and felt horrible shame and dissociated and just felt like I had to, like a zombie, keep going and, you know, never speak about it. And I did, and I think that's very common for women. I think that so many women have this experience, and at least for me, with Me Too, then there were like names for it, and I understood what it was and what had happened, and I understood like how horribly victimized I was. And that in both of the shows, one of them I quit, and one of them I was fired from because of this, you know. And so, and that's like my career, I didn't have agency in my career because of this, you know, and I wasn't, and everything's worked out, which is very stoic of me. But, you know, it all worked out fine. But it's just, that's like not right, you know,
Right.
that stuff gets taken from you as a woman in the workplace. And so it was really fun for me to write about that, because I did have the facts that were really awful and kind of, you know, I've really gotten over it. So it's not like I was sitting there writing through tears or anything. You know, I was writing through laughter, actually. I'm like, haha, because look what I'm writing about now, jerks. Scared yet, you know? And so so it was kind of fun, you know, to write it. It was like, it wasn't that emotional. I was like, oh, this is going to work really well. And so, yeah, so that, and it's kind of at the dark heart of the dark center of the book. And it's like many people's favorite part of the book, and it is. I'm really proud of it. I think it's like a great, bizarre middle of the book that you just don't know where it's going.
No, and then when you get to the other side, there's this, you shift gears like from first to third, and then you're like, there's a hard turn.
Yes.
But I want to go back to something you said, because this is stoicism language that you were using, saying that she had bad character. You're not saying that she was to blame for what happened to her, but Heraclitus says character is fate.
Yes.
And so you see her going on a journey where she has taken control of her, what she can control.
Yes.
And then changed her fate, but not because she was at fault.
No, and I think that to me is just, that gray area is very interesting, because she definitely was a victim. There's just like, no, she was sexually assaulted, and that's just what it was. But when she first discovers Stoicism, and it says, you know, that basically you are in control of your fate, she takes this, and it's the way that she gets out of her victimhood. You know, she thinks, I shouldn't have wanted to be in with the in crowd so badly. I shouldn't have let myself be demeaned that badly. And so she feels this lifeline by being told that she's not a victim. And I know that that's contradictory, but I mean, I've had that experience of just this kind of elation if you're just really in a depression and you're feeling boxed in, And if you can change your perspective a little bit, that you're not a victim, it really is a release. You want that. You're desperate. Like, I guess there's people who love victimhood or whatever, but it's, I bet even they don't like victimhood. They just don't know not to like victimhood, you know? But it's like the mentality. And but then what's tricky about it is there are victims, you know, that we are victims, that we should feel victimhood. And in fact, that's Adora's journey, is going from kind of not realizing she's a victim to saying, I'm not a victim, to then fully owning that she was a victim.
Right.
And I think that's like a really, I think there's a lot of women who have things in their lives that they can think about that, and where you don't want to be a victim, but I am a victim, and it doesn't mean you have to define yourself by it, but I don't think it does anybody any favors not to acknowledge that they've been victimized, you know, at all.
That section also takes us back to a lot of toxicity of the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of us grew up in this time. A lot of us lived through it, at least. And I mean, she's struggling with her weight, and she's calculating how many pounds she could lose before the first day of the next job, and you know, really just beating up on herself in so many ways. Then later in the novel, we meet her mother. And, you know, so we've got Adora and Viv and their relationship. Then we meet Adora's mother. And you see, you know, so many of those tumblers click into place. You think, oh, this is part of that legacy
Yes.
of shame and internalized misogyny
Yes.
that Adora is and was dealing with. And the most heartbreaking moment, honestly, in the book for me, Adora and her daughter make some cookies. And then in the morning when they get up, the cookies have been thrown in the trash by the mother. And that was just that moment. I felt like it summed up so much hurt.
Right.
That
And Dora sees them in the trash and says, what are these doing in the trash? And the mother says, I didn't know what those were, which I think is kind of funny. That
ridiculous.
I
I mean, it's laugh out loud and totally heartbreaking.
I didn't know who those, I didn't know whose those were. And you're like, well, and that's what she says. I didn't know whose those were. And she was like, well, obviously they're ours. We made them last night. Like, what do you mean? But so it was. And then I think the mother says, well, you don't need to be eating them, you know, is just basically like, you don't need to be eating those cookies. So yeah, so there's a lot of that, you know, what again, we didn't have words for it back then, but like food noise, you know, of just the constant calculation in your head about the calories and your fat, and I hate myself for eating this, and I'm not going to eat that. And so that's where we see Adora. She really has invested her happiness. You know, that's what I was really trying to do, is just have her invest her happiness in like bad things, you know, is not understand that you know, I mean, I'm not saying sitting up straight is really that great, but I mean, that's like a shift where I was like, you know, it's going to make me happy if I sit up straight. That's like much healthier mentally than to be like, I have to work out, I have to diet, I have to whatever women do to try to be thin to look good on camera or something.
Right.
I just didn't do that. I'm going to do my PT exercises and do this and get my shoulder down and whatever and all that stuff, which is good. It's like a cute little thing that I did just because I would have self-respect. And that's what I really wanted to try to chart, was the journey from, you know, Adora, who maybe had false values, which again, I don't want to be too hard on her because she was young. That's
Right.
also the values of youth, you know, and I think that as somebody in the book says at one point, like nothing would ever get done if we didn't have false values, you know, like it's important for people to go after things in a crazy way with the belief that it will make them happy. And they'll find out later it doesn't make them happy, but then at least we've got penicillin or something. And so I wanted that journey, you know, of someone who kind of has embraced false values to then embrace like proper values.
Yeah. Well, it makes the freedom that we see her embrace so much more beautiful. And like I said, I mean, she's somebody people will want to emulate in a lot of ways, in spite of her flaws.
Oh, good.
So this book is coming out 10 years after your last book.
Yes.
How many times did you pick up this idea and put it down? Because it's a pretty crazy idea.
Yes, it's definitely a crazy idea. I picked it up and put it down many times. That this was a book where I knew she would be a stoic. I didn't know that she would actually be a philosopher herself. I just knew she would be a stoic. And then I knew I had my big crazy plot twist at the end that I knew. And so then it was like, how do you bring those two together? So that's kind of what I know, those two things. And then it's just kind of math and reverse engineering and figuring it out, you know? And so I picked it up and put it down because I couldn't get the voice right. The voice that I was writing with for a long time, having her be a stoic, I wrote her a stoic in the way that you were talking about it in the beginning of the interview, of just, you know, grin and bear it, you know, no emotions. And that's how I kind of started writing Adora, but there's just not a lot of energy in that. It wasn't fun. It just kind of collapsed because I mean, I liked her, okay, but I just didn't want to like go on a journey with her necessarily. And it was when I realized that she could be a happy stoic who just had cracked desire and therefore was just kind of tripping through life. Then that really broke the book open for me when I got the voice right.
Was this decade, was that kind of a period of healing for you?
Well, the decade was spent working on TV shows that didn't go. So that was really, it was such a pain, is that that's really why I became a stoic, because it's so maddening being in Hollywood, you know, and all the stuff you can't control. I really needed some other operating system that wasn't me being in total agita at all times about all the canceled meetings. But I had one show that Julia Roberts was attached to for HBO. I had all these writers, we wrote scripts, like these were real projects, and that it just took years for it to happen and then fall apart. And then right after that, I don't know, it's like I didn't learn. I wrote a pilot. Olivia Colman was attached to it. We sold it to Apple, got a writing room, wrote scripts, did the whole thing, and then it fell apart. And that was each were maybe 4 years. I mean, it's crazy when I think that
So now I don't know when you wrote this novel.
Exactly. Well, so basically maybe maybe it was like 6 or 7 years total. And then I got divorced. I moved to New York and I got really happy. And then I was like, oh, maybe my character doesn't have to be like shut down and unhappy. Maybe she can be happy like I am. And so that's what happened. I basically found my own personal happiness, and in a very long-term relationship ended, and kind of by definition towards the end of you're obviously in a relationship to stay together and to go the distance. You have a kid. Nobody wants that not to work out, but it's got to be really bad for it not to work out. So it was, it got bad for it not to work out. And I think I was just unable to write anything from a place of happiness for many years as it was kind of coming to the end.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we have from the audience, by the way, if you have questions, raise them up. People will come and pick those up.
Thank you.
Do you have any advice for breaking into TV writing today?
Oh.
Program strategies. So stoicism is
Yeah.
something you'll need
Yeah.
if you know.
I don't know. Good luck. So what? Okay, I'm a dinosaur, and the world is changing. In my day, the way you broke into TV was very different from how you break into TV now. And I think, from what I understand, what the kids tell me, how you break into TV now is you have to be some kind of content creator. That you have to have a creative voice and a creative vision, and you have to write your own pilots, and it has to really be your voice. And if you can make YouTube videos or TikToks or whatever that go along with it, that's, better. And it really is that they want these creative individual voices. And a lot of times these people then will write every episode of their show. It's very different from like the sitcom machine that I was part of, where you would just hire, there were like 10 writers on Arrested Development, on Mad About You. And it wasn't about your personal voice or anything. It was about, like, the show was created by someone, but even that was kind of a Frankenstein's monster ultimately by the time it aired, of all the network notes and stuff and the actors and everybody. And then you just had to kind of copy that every week. And now it's very different. It's very voicey, as it's called. So I would say whoever wants to break into TV, work on your voice, write something original that's really good and undeniable. Easier said than done, but that's really how you have to do it.
Another TV question for you. This person says, I loved Mad About You and 90210. Did you write Jamie in Mad About You? And what was your favorite of these shows?
Oh, yeah, I'd say Mad About You was the one that I did the best on, in terms of that I got the most in the show. And I was the most valued on that show than I was on any show. And it really got to the point where just anything that happened to me, they would write a show about it. that I would just come in and I'd be like,
so you are Jamie.
Yeah. I mean, I would just, there would just be funny, I was a weirdo. I never watched TV. Now this Lena Dunham book, I never saw Girls. I've never seen Friends. I've never seen anything. I just don't watch TV. I never have. I always read books even when I was a TV writer. And so I think I had a much quirkier existence than the people who were writing TV and just sitting home and watching TV all day. So kind of stranger, I would interact with the world in a different way than most people. So I would come in and have funny things that happen. And so, and I was in a relationship. And so I would always talk about the fights that George and I would have, these funny, weird fights. And they loved it. Oh my God, they loved it. So yes, so that was kind of the show. I think that, and luckily George, my ex, never saw Mad About You. And there were times I remember we used to, like, after work, if we didn't get out too late, we go meet at the gym. And I remember once coming to the gym and he was standing on the like workout floor or whatever, looking up, and there was like a TV of Mad About You was on, and he had this look on his face, and I was just like, honey, hi, and pulled him over. And because it was really about us. That episode particularly was about us, and I really didn't want him to see it, and it was funny. But then it turns out that what he was he did seem very agitated. He was a TV writer also. He wrote for The Simpsons for 30 years, and so he was did cartoons or whatever, but he didn't really know sitcoms, or that wasn't his thing. But then when he looked mad when he was watching it, and he looked very agitated, and I was like, oh, hi, what's up? And then kind of turned back, and he was like, they're just flapping their hands all the time. Why are they flapping their hands? And I was like, it's a sitcom. That's what you talk like this. So he was just like, why would they do that? Because he just never had seen anything like it, because he would just do cartoons.
And lived in a cave?
Exactly, lived in a cave. Yeah, no, he just never watched it. He was even worse than I was about not watching. He didn't have a TV. So, yeah.
This question is, you are a mother, and I find it interesting that you had Bernadette abandon her daughter. I'm sure you've had this question before. Why?
Yeah.
Why that choice?
Well, she doesn't abandon her daughter. Who said that? Let's get into it. Reveal yourself. Okay, so here's the thing. It seems like Bernadette abandoned her daughter, okay? I really got this worked out, if we're really gonna go through the nuts and bolts of it. Bernadette goes to the airport believing that they're going on a family trip together, and gets to the airport, and they won't tell her who's on the plane or who's not on the plane. So she gets on the plane believing she's going to be reunited with her daughter. And then she gets there, and then, yeah, she does stay there. Okay, but the first thing she does when she gets there is sends a letter back to her daughter immediately and says, look, I'm here and I like it and I want to stay, but I need to hear from you yes or no, can I stay? Because I really feel like good things are happening to me down here and I'm sorry. And that's the letter that ends the book. But what's happened is that she has sent she sent when she realizes B's not there, she sends the letter to school believing that that's the safest place for the letter, because she worries if she sends it home, the husband who she's kind of worried about. So she thinks she sent it to the safe place, but not realizing that B has left school. So it is a misunderstanding, I will say, that's the whole thing. So she never intends to abandon her. So correct yourself. I do not believe in abandoning children. And she, in fact, asks permission to be. And that was actually a really hard part to write because I needed to really compress the amount of time that Bernadette was away. And I think it was like 4 days. You know, it's really not that long. And I feel like, come on, 4 days, we can be away from our kids for 4 days, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The letter at the end of the book was very healing.
Yeah, and then the letter really was, so the letter at the end was saying, please tell me that I can stay. And if you don't want me to, I'll come home. And she means it sincerely.
Here's another Bernadette question. But first, they say it's one of my all-time favorites.
Thank you.
How did you come up with Bernadette's quirks?
The quirks. I think that, she's pretty quirky. It was really based on me. I think a lot of her weird, flamboyant takes were my takes. I'd moved to Seattle recently and really didn't like it, didn't like the people, didn't like the moms, felt very rejected when I was there. And I was so shocked because it was like, wait, people usually like me and now these people don't like me. Like, what happened, you know? And it was actually terrible. Like, I'd come from LA with my people and we moved to Seattle randomly, and I really believed that I would just get a bunch of friends there, and then these moms didn't like me, you know? And so that, I thought that was a funny character. And then you do things as a writer where, you know, I have her be isolated. And I don't know, like a quirk that I'm thinking of, I'm just assuming, like maybe this is a thing that she has a little Airstream that she goes in their backyard and she kind of does all of her, like writes her to her virtual assistant from the Airstream. And that to me was, I'm trying to kind of sell the reader on the idea that she's like super isolated, you know, that it's not just even in her house, she has to go to be by herself. And so what I do is I come up with just expressions of the kind of character flaws. You know, you try to put them make them concrete. Don't just have her think things. Like again, Ordora has the coven. You know, she's not just like sitting here going like, I don't need men, you know, because you don't believe it if they say it too much. Like, you really want to see it in action. And so I think a lot of the quirks came from like me understanding her character flaws and then thinking like, what's a funny thing that she overshares with a virtual assistant, you know, seems funny to me, right? That it's like, and she's really like her full beautiful self, but only with someone who doesn't understand anything she's saying. That seemed kind of funny to me, you know, so you kind of I try to come up with those things.
In getting ready for our conversation, I went to your website and I noticed that you have American Girl dolls dressed like Bernadette and Adora.
Yes.
That's so great. Are those your American Girl dolls?
They're my daughters, they're poppies. Is that and they're left over from the Bernadette days of the website, is that my daughter, I mean, and you really should go to my website, it's so cute, because what she would do is she would set up all of her baby dolls to play school. But it would be like the big baby dolls with like the Polly Pockets and the Barbie dolls. They were all like the wrong sizes. And they would all be sitting there, and then there'd be someone teaching them at school. And it was so cute. And like Calico Critters, she was super into Calico Critters. And it was so funny. And she had so many of them. And then when I needed to do a website, I thought that it would be funny. Oh, I'll tell you what it was, is that she had these weird American Girl doll posters that were like playing soccer, and it was like, you can do it, be your best, you know? And they were just so generic that I was like, oh, I want my website to be like that. So so I got an American Girl doll, and then, like, all you need to do to make me happy is tell me I have to have something custom made on Etsy, because that's like, will never be happier. And I was like, oh, I guess I have to have like a custom fishing vest made on Etsy for an American Girl doll. And so I did. So I go on Etsy and I get like the whole thing. I get Bernadette all figured out. And then when it was time for this book, I was like, nothing's stopping me from getting an American Girl doll and getting a blue dress custom made on Etsy for
With
her.
pockets.
With pockets, exactly. So I did that. So yeah, it's kind of funny and weird.
So, the book just came out. Obviously, there are some early readers. Oprah created her own early readers. And every single person who shared their thoughts with you on the Oprah podcast was like, I'm really excited about Stoicism. I started doing the research. I'm going to read these books that you mentioned. And did you think that you were going to launch a new generation of Stoics with this novel?
It's pretty crazy, and that Oprah had never heard of Stoicism. And I think, I don't watch any of this, but in real life, she starts out the interview by saying that she'd never heard of Stoicism, and that she's really into it. And now she is really into it, because we filmed that in January, and then I saw her again last week to do the CBS This Morning thing. And she was talking all about Stoicism, and Gail was in on it, and they were all talking about it. And I was like, wow, and she's just interviewed Ryan Holiday, who's the Daily Stoic guy, that she flew him out to Maui to talk about Stoicism. And I was like, hey, I'm right here. I can't talk about Stoicism in Maui.
You launched that ship. Come on.
Exactly. Like, I totally got cut out. And so that's really cool. But, I knew that I would want her to be a philosopher, just because I really like this, like it so much. And again, I'm looking for the things I have authority over, like that's really important to me. Couldn't make her I could make her an art restorer, but I'd have to do all this research, and then I don't think I would really get it right, And in fact, I made Bernadette an architect just because, like, I'm so, like, nosy about houses, I'm just so critical about houses, and I'm like, oh, I could be an architect, I mean, I believe that about myself, but because, like, every house I get, I have to remodel, I have to really make it exactly the way I want it. And so that was like in me already, that I felt like I could talk about that with authority. And I know a lot about architecture naturally. So with Stoicism, it was scary for me to write it, because I didn't want it to be a turnoff because if you get me started on Stoicism, I'm just going to write an entire book about Stoicism, and I know that's not what novels are. And so I kind of made this rule that she would only really talk about Stoicism to these two little boys, that one of her jobs, which is funny, which I guess you're the judge if it's funny. I'll tell you, you can, I don't want to be, you're like, nothing's funny about that. But one of her jobs is that she's the private moral tutor to a very rich family, where they've hired her to try to teach ethics to these little 11-year-old brats. And so she goes after school and tries to explain to them that, like, $1,000 Louis Vuitton jeweled sneakers are not the way to happiness, and so it's that type of thing, to try to teach them good values. And so that's where she really does her Stoic, like, lecturing. But it's cute because it's to these boys who just aren't buying it, And so I think when I figured out how to do that, then I was like, oh, good, I can really put Stoicism in here. But it's fun. I mean, people do love it, as they should love it. It's extremely readable and very applicable. There's nothing scary about it. It's really fun.
This is your fourth novel, so you have this body of work that's been out there. People have relationships with your books. People have relationships with your characters. So in releasing this novel to the world, do you have a hope of how it will connect with people? Do you have a vision for that?
I don't. I really only want to entertain people. I feel like my job is an entertainer. And I think my books are very serious. Like I've always been kind of more serious than I think other people do. Or because I write about women and I write funny books, I feel like maybe I'm not taken as seriously as if I was a man writing about men. And so I feel like even though to me they're really rooted in things that are very serious, all I want to do is show you a good time. And if you get some good serious stuff along the way, then good for you. But I just want to write the book that I would love to read. And that's really all I'm trying to do.
We have time for 2 more questions, I've been told. And so this one's a deep dive, obviously a serious reader of yours.
Oh.
How did you go about choosing the poem Skunk Hair in Today Will Be
Skunk
Different?
Hour,
Oh,
right.
Skunk Hour. So I'm
Yeah.
reading. I haven't read this one. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Skunk Hour in Today Will Be Different. And did you know from the beginning that you wanted it to be part of the story?
That was another example where Eleanor in that book is memorizing poems. And she was kind of a mess with a capital M. And one of the things is that she had had a baby and her memory was gone. Her mind hadn't fully come back, or she'd accepted that it was never going to come back. Ladies, am I right? That you think, oh, this is temporary, and you're like, no, it's forever. I'm never going to have my brain back. And so she was memorizing poems with a poet. And that's what I was doing. And I've been working with the poet on and off for many years, memorizing poems. And we meet privately, and he gives me a poem, and then I memorize it. And
Why did you start that?
I started that because I'll tell you why. I started it because I am a real autodidact, and I'd moved to Seattle and alienated or didn't befriend anybody and had no friends. And I really feel like poetry is way too hard for me to read on my own, but I recognize it as a superior form of writing, but I don't understand it. And so what I did is I went to someone who, I knew someone involved at the University of Washington, and I said, I'm looking for a private poetry teacher and someone who can just help me understand poetry, like the great poets. And so then I found someone, Ed Skoog, a great friend of mine and a great poet. And so Ed, now he's a friend of mine. And so so that's what I have Eleanor doing. So again, that's an example of something that I just happen to be doing, which is to read poems and memorize poems and then recite them under the private tutoring of a poet. I know, now it does sound pretty weird now that you say it.
I don't know where your characters, these quirks.
Where they get these quirks. I know, exactly. I guess that's an example. And so Skunk Hour, I love that poem, kills me. And I just think that it's about Robert Lowell going crazy. And it's about him. It's a really beautiful poem, and it's about. Listen, I wouldn't know this if someone didn't tell me what it was about. I would have just thought it was about a skunk with his head in a carton of sour cream, because that's like in the poem, and I'd be like, oh, he's, but it's actually this really beautiful thing where it's Robert Lowell, who really fought depression, really bad depression, institutionalized and stuff, that he always knew when a bout of depression was coming on, and he wrote this poem like knowing that things were about to get bad. And so I thought that and then in my book, Eleanor has kind of a reckoning that's about to happen with her sister that she knows she can't push off anymore. So it felt like a thing about this ominous feeling, and it felt like it paired with the story of the book.
All right, final question. Do you consider yourself the helpless or the competent traveler?
Oh my gosh, this is another Today Will Be Different question. God bless you. Oh yeah, that's so funny. So I have this thing in Today Will Be Different where I say that when you travel, and people really do like this, that when you travel with people, you're either the competent traveler that everyone else is like, where are we going? What's happening? You know, and you're the one who's like, I'm taking charge. Or else if there's someone already like that, you're the one going like, really? Do we have to do that? Like, I don't want to do that. You know, and it's like we both can be both of them. It just kind of depends on the dynamic. And so, it's always shocking to me how competent I can be and then just what a draggy pain in the it can be. And it really just depends on who you are. So I would say that I'm both the competent traveler and the helpless traveler.
Well, Maria Semple, thank you so much for talking with me and for making me so acutely aware of my posture. It's been such a pleasure.
I'll give you exercises. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. A thrill. Thank you, Charity.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to sign out there?
Yeah. So
Okay, I'll see you out there.
I'll remind everybody you can buy Go Gentle over there from Hunter at Beaverdale Books. The next AViD event is Saturday, May 2nd. It's part of the Des Moines Book Festival, so go to the book festival. Enjoy. Thanks a lot.